Welcome, divine mandate. Every lie has a time limit. As yours just ran out at the same time they stopped talking. That's the energy that surrounds this moment. Chosen one. A time when everyone in the city, community, and even the quiet people in the back row suddenly woke up from whatever spell your enemies had cast and saw you for who you really are. It's that rare change when truth doesn't come in politely. It pushes through the door and says, "Move. I'm late, but I'm here now." For months, sometimes years, people made up their minds about you based on old gossip, stories driven by jealousy, and the dramatic speeches of people who couldn't stand your potential. But here's the funny part. Psychology says that people naturally side with the person who seems the calmest, most consistent, and least showy. So, while they were over there putting on a whole Broadway show, you were just living your life and winning just by being there. And now, the whole city is loving it. Everyone seemed to realize at the same time, wait, hold on, you were the issue, or was it the one who has been screaming in for KSHD for months? People who acted like they didn't care suddenly do. The people who were watching from the sidelines are now falling over themselves to switch teams, just like fans who realize they backed the losing side and want to do it quickly before someone catches them. This isn't karma, it's clear as day. The whispers have changed, the energy has changed, and the same people who used to confidently speak out against you are now chewing on their own words like dry biscuits with no water. They're feeling bad, they're out in the open. And they're shocked that the truth didn't just come out. It came out with receipts, a spotlight, and a microphone. And the best part was that you didn't have to fight. You didn't run for office, beg, explain, or defend. You lived. You made it through. You rose up. And the city took notice. The truth is that when someone lies, the story changes. The pattern happens again when someone tells the truth. And your pattern, character, consistency, and strength became clear. So now everyone in the city is on your side, not because you yelled the loudest, but because they finally saw the difference between someone who was building a life and someone who was building drama. Your enemies didn't just lose the story, they lost trust, and if they were too loud, they might have lost friends, fans, and followers as well. But don't worry, they'll make it through, most likely. For now, take a seat because what happens next will make them regret what they said about you more than anything else they ever said. First, they weren't just wrong about you, they were wrong in public, and now their own echo is making it hard for them to breathe. It's one thing when people choose to think less of you. It's a whole new level of fun and shame when they do it loudly in front of everyone. They thought that no one would ever see the truth behind what they said, which gave them confidence. They talked about your life as if it were a story they could tell, giving you roles that weren't yours, predicting failures that never happened, and making drama out of things they didn't understand. They thought people would believe them more if they made more noise, so they thought they would get applause for being brave. The problem is that life has a way of making loudmouths their own worst enemies. Every brag, every insult, and every public prediction of your failure became a seed that would grow into proof. The louder they yelled, the more people noticed the difference between what they said and what was really there. People stopped listening to what you said and started watching what you did. Their actions started to speak louder than any of their words ever could, slowly and quietly. Now all that's left is the echo of their lies, which is hitting them harder than they thought it would. It's amazing how well known their mistake became. Everyone who saw it, even just a little bit, noticed the difference. It's okay to be wrong when you're talking to someone alone. It's one thing to be wrong in front of a crowd. It's another to be wrong in front of a crowd that later agrees with you. People in the city, the community, and even people who just happened to be passing by all started to see that they were not only wrong about you, but they were also very wrong about you. And the louder they had been, the more it hurt when the truth came out. Now they're stuck in a feedback loop that they made themselves. Every bad thing they said about you and every time they were sure you would fail is now coming back to them as shame. People laugh, people shake their heads, people quietly switch their loyalty to someone who showed them without trying that their assumptions were wrong. They didn't know that by being loud, they made their mistake just as public, undeniable, and embarrassing as they had hoped your downfall would be. They didn't realize how strong your presence and consistency were. Now they have to watch as the city sides with you, proving that their pride was their downfall and that the truth is louder than any shout. The same people who didn't believe you are now quoting you, copying you, and studying you as if you were a blueprint. It's strange how the people who used to doubt you are now learning from your life. The same people who made fun of your ideas, mocked your confidence, and told you to give up on your dreams are now watching everything you do very closely. They thought they knew what you could do and what you couldn't do, and they thought your success was a fluke, a lucky break, or something that would only last for a short time. What they didn't know was that what they were seeing was the base of something much bigger than them. Now they're in a hurry to catch up. They pay attention to how you deal with problems, the choices you make, the energy you bring, and the results you get, and they write things down, both physically and mentally. They're trying to figure out how to make a life that they once said would never happen for you. All of the habits they told you to ignore when you were having trouble now seem like great ideas. It feels like every word they laughed at was a lesson. They are looking at you like you're a book on how to do well. But the truth is that they're behind, and no amount of watching can give them the years of discipline, resilience, and instinct that got you here. It's even more embarrassing for them that their own attempts to copy your moves almost never work. They forget how to be subtle, patient, and on time while they were busy underestimating you. They try to copy your style, quote you, and act like you, but the city sees right through it. People can tell when someone is pretending to be someone else and when they are being real. And being real always wins. Your progress, on the other hand, stays the same, like a river that flows past anyone trying to stop it. They used to ignore them, but now they're obsessed with them. They used to use all their energy to try to bring you down, but now they use it to watch, learn, and copy. And every time they look at you, it's a silent way of saying that they were wrong about you, didn't see your potential, and didn't give you the benefit of the doubt. In the end, their study doesn't make things fair. It just shows who was really ahead all the time. They have to follow your lead, write down your plans, and accept that while they were busy doubting you, you were busy making a reality that they can only try to understand, not copy. Number 3, they made a big mistake when they thought the city wanted entertainment, the city wanted the truth, and you gave it to them. They spent a lot of time making drama, making conflict worse, and putting on shows, thinking that people would be entertained enough to agree with them. They thought that if they could make the chaos seem worse, blow up every mistake, and twist every action, the city would agree with their version of events. They thought that noise could drown out reality, gossip could take the place of evidence, and spectacle could take the place of substance. That was their biggest and first mistake. People don't stay loyal to the loudest voice or the most dramatic story, and that's the truth. They're drawn to reality. They see that things are consistent, real, and work. While your critics were busy putting on a show for an imaginary audience, you were quietly building, living, and carrying out your truth. You weren't trying to be loud or showy. You weren't trying to prove anyone wrong by putting on a show or getting into a fight. You just kept doing what you said you would do and stayed true to yourself. The city could tell the difference between someone doing a job and someone living a life just by looking at the difference. They were too proud because they thought the city couldn't see through lies. They thought people would be too busy with drama to notice. But the truth always gets through. People began to compare what they were seeing to what was really going on. They saw that what you said was true. Your results backed up what you said, and they couldn't fake the authenticity of your presence. The audience changed their minds without saying anything, quietly moving their support to someone who actually delivered. Every lie, overstatement, and act from your enemies only made you look more honest. The more they tried to make people laugh, the more people wanted the truth, and you had it in spades. They didn't just underestimate you. It was a mistake to think that the crowd wasn't smart enough to see the truth when it was right in front of them. Now, the city is not just watching you, they're following you. They're siding with someone who always puts reality over show, truth over show, and substance over noise. And even though your enemies are still performing, the people who matter have already made up their minds about who they will support. Their attempt to have fun led to their downfall, and your quiet truth became the victory that everyone is seeing. Fourth, their story fell apart because it needed you to fail, but you didn't want to play that part. The whole story was based on the idea that you would fall apart. They made up stories, made flaws seem worse, and spread rumors, sure that you would eventually break in a way that made their version seem true. They weren't just saying you would fail, they were counting on it. Their ego needed you to fail so they could feel better about their jealousy, insecurity, and bad behavior. Without your fall, their story had no basis, no weight, and no trustworthiness. But their problem was simple. You didn't fall. They thought you would fall apart, panic, or spiral out of control. Instead, you kept going, kept growing, and kept showing them they were wrong by living your life with focus and strength. Every day you stayed grounded was another crack in the story they had made up. Every little thing you did to succeed was another piece of their shaky story that fell off. Your strength didn't just keep you safe, it also showed them who you were. People started to see that there was a problem. They saw that your life wasn't as crazy as other people said it was. They saw that your character didn't match the bad things people were saying. The city figured out that the only person who was pushing the story was the one who would gain from your failure. And that's when everything changed. The people in the crowd could see. They were just waiting for the truth to come out. And when it did, the whole script changed. All of a sudden, the person who tried to make you look crazy looked crazy themselves. The person who tried to make you look weak looked weak, because they needed you to fail to feel important. It was clear that they were angry, their desperation showed, and their plans became embarrassing. They only had one story, and you wouldn't let them tell it. You didn't fight back. You just didn't give them the show they had been practicing for. You lived, you grew, and you rose above the nonsense. They were left standing in the ruins of a story that couldn't survive without your death. In the end, the city didn't support you because you yelled louder or fought harder. They agreed with you because the truth was clear. The real bad guy is the person who needs someone else to fail to feel powerful. They showed themselves without you doing anything. Your growth showed how stagnant they were. You didn't do better than them. You got too big for the version of you they wanted to keep you in. Your growth wasn't loud or showy, but it was steady, and that's why it was so hard to ignore. They saw you as small, limited, and predictable, and they wanted you to stay that way so they could feel better than you. With each step you took, that illusion fell apart. You didn't just get better. You turned into a version of yourself that they never expected, a version they couldn't control, and one that their limited view could no longer hold. What they hated wasn't your success, it was the way it showed them who they were. They had to face their own excuses and the ways they had settled for less than they could have been when they saw you grow. Your progress didn't hurt them in any way. It was a big surprise. It showed that they were afraid of growing, didn't want to change, and had habits that kept them stuck while you moved forward with purpose and vision. Every success you had and every goal you reached was like a spotlight that showed how much you had changed compared to how little they had. And that's why they seemed dumb. They aren't just losing a race. They can't believe that the person they thought they could control has gone far beyond what they thought they could do. They're only making it clear how far ahead you are by trying to downplay your growth, downplay your wins, or criticize your progress. You didn't have to fight with them. You didn't have to show anything. Your growth was a statement, proof, and a victory in its own right. They thought they could put you in a box, limit you, or guess what you would do. But evolution doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need anyone's permission. You just grew out of the expectations they tried to set for you, the boxes they tried to put you in, and the story they tried to control. And now all anyone sees is the stark contrast. The person who refused to remain small and the people who desperately wished they had done the same. Their fear and frustration make them look ridiculous, and the city, the witnesses, and even casual observers can't help but notice the truth. You weren't competing, you were evolving, and that evolution left them exposed. Number 6. They wanted you isolated, but accidentally made you the community's benchmark for integrity. Their plan was simple: push you to the edge, make you feel alone, and make everyone else think you were untrustworthy or not worth their time. They believed that if they could make you seem distant, flawed, or irrelevant, the community would forget about you, and their narrative would go unchallenged. They didn't realize that isolation has a funny way of doing the opposite when the truth is on your side. Instead of turning people away, their attacks drew attention. The city began to notice details they had overlooked before. The way you carried yourself under pressure, the calm consistency in your words, the way your actions matched your promises. People started comparing what they had heard from your detractors with what they actually saw in real life, and the contrast was undeniable. There was no drama, no chaos, no hidden agendas, just someone living with honesty, discipline, and a heart that genuinely cared. Every attempt to smear you became proof of their desperation and unreliability. Meanwhile, you remained the same, steady and grounded, proving that character cannot be fabricated and integrity cannot be shaken. The more they tried to isolate you, the more the community became aware of what they were missing. Instead of making you invisible, they set the stage for you to shine as a model of trustworthiness and respect. This shift didn't happen overnight. People began to tell their friends, their colleagues, their families, "Look at how this person actually lives. Notice how consistent they are, how real they are." Slowly, you became the benchmark, the standard against which everyone else's words and actions were being measured. The city didn't just side with you because you survived their attacks. They sided with you because you showed what integrity truly looks like when tested. In trying to weaken you, they strengthened your influence. In trying to isolate you, they highlighted your value. Their miscalculation was thinking that negativity could suppress someone whose life already radiated honesty and discipline. Now your name carries weight, your actions inspire, and the city recognizes that real character doesn't need hype. It simply exists undeniable and unshakable as a standard for everyone else to follow. Number 7. They spent years looking for your weaknesses, but they never looked for your strengths, and that's where they've lost. They invested time, energy, and attention trying to figure out how to take you down. Every move you made was analyzed, every habit scrutinized, every word cataloged for weakness. They assumed that if they could predict your reaction, manipulate your emotions, or exploit a flaw, they could control the narrative and your life. They thought knowing your vulnerabilities would be enough, but they forgot one critical thing. Understanding weaknesses doesn't mean understanding the person as a whole. While they obsessed over cracks, you quietly built armor. While they calculated your reactions, you refined your strategy. They studied you like a problem to be solved, completely ignoring the force, resilience, and intelligence that made you unpredictable. They expected the same patterns, the same emotional triggers, the same predictable behavior, but you weren't the same person they thought they could manipulate. Your strength didn't come from being unbreakable. It came from knowing exactly how to respond when pushed, how to turn pressure into progress, and how to keep moving forward when others tried to stop you. They underestimated the wrong person. Every plan they laid, every narrative they crafted, every assumption they made collided with the reality that you were always 10 steps ahead. Their focus on weakness made them blind to the consistency, vision, and resilience that defined you. They tried to predict you emotionally, but your mind and spirit were disciplined. They aimed at vulnerability, but you responded with strategy. They thought they were in control, but the city saw what they couldn't. Their obsession with tearing you down highlighted their own insecurity, while your focus on building yourself showcased undeniable strength. Now the city isn't just witnessing your rise, they're recognizing their failure. They see the contrast between someone who is misunderstood and someone who misunderstands. The people who once followed the loudest voices are now paying attention to the truth. You weren't just surviving scrutiny, you were thriving under it. They underestimated your strengths, and that miscalculation became their undoing. Your ability to turn their years of analysis into fuel for growth didn't just prove them wrong, it exposed them entirely. Number 8. Their reputation collapsed because they told a story that required everyone to ignore what they witnessed firsthand. They thought they could rewrite reality with enough confidence and repetition. They spun narratives that required the community to forget what they had seen with their own eyes, to dismiss the evidence of your character, and to believe a story built on imagination rather than fact. Their plan relied on everyone ignoring the consistency, honesty, and integrity that you had displayed for years. They assumed people would take words over lived experience, rumors over reality, and dramatized accusations over the truth that had been right in front of them all along. The problem for them was that reality doesn't bend to wishful thinking. Your life wasn't built on empty statements or temporary performances. It was built on countless acts, decisions, and displays of reliability that no rumor could erase. Every interaction, every success, every demonstration of discipline and character became proof of who you really were. The community could see the difference between someone performing for attention and someone living a life of consistent integrity. And when you can see and feel the truth, lies can only do so much. Their desperate and imaginative accusations began to fall apart under their own weight. People weren't blind. They had been there. They had observed. And they remembered. Every claim the detractors made contradicted the evidence the community had witnessed firsthand. Instead of convincing anyone, their stories became a reflection of their own desperation and dishonesty. The credibility they thought they had slowly eroded with every word they spoke until it became impossible for anyone to take them seriously. In the end, their strategy backfired completely. The community didn't just reject their story, they ignored it entirely. Their lies were like debris on a road. People stepped over them without even glancing. Your life, your actions, and your integrity stood untouched, visible, and undeniable. The contrast between truth and fabrication was so stark that their reputation couldn't survive the collision. What they tried to build with manipulation collapsed because it depended on a suspension of belief the world refused to grant. You didn't need to fight it. The evidence of your life spoke louder than any of their accusations ever could. Number 9. The city sided with you because you were courageous enough to be transparent while they hid behind manipulation. What made people trust you wasn't perfection, it was honesty. You didn't hide behind excuses, fake confidence, or carefully rehearsed storylines. When things got messy, you faced the moment with realness. You didn't try to reinvent yourself to look innocent. You didn't twist details to win sympathy. You simply stood in your truth, even when it exposed your flaws, even when it made you vulnerable, even when it wasn't the easy thing to do. That kind of transparency isn't common, and people recognize the courage behind it. Meanwhile, the ones who tried to discredit you couldn't do the same. They moved in shadows, built narratives behind closed doors, and performed for whichever crowd would listen. Every time pressure hit, they switched their story. Every time questions came, they panicked. Every time accountability knocked, they hid behind excuses, alliances, and manipulation. Their behavior created suspicion, without you having to say a single word. When someone is genuine, you can feel it. When someone is performing, you can feel that too. Your transparency made the community feel safe around you. It showed them you had nothing to hide. It showed them your confidence came from authenticity, not theatrics. And once people saw the difference between real and rehearsed, between consistent truth and shifty lies, their loyalty naturally shifted toward you. They weren't influenced, they were convinced. Your honesty held up under scrutiny. Their manipulation fell apart because it was too heavy. You didn't just gain the trust of the city, you deserve it. You showed that being honest, even when it's hard, builds a reputation that is stronger than any rumor. And the more your enemies tried to hide their true selves, the clearer their goals became. In the end, the difference showed everything. One person was honest and the other was full of lies. And that's why the city picked you. Long before the end, they knew who was real. Number 10. Your win didn't make them look dumb. They were obsessed with seeing you fail. It wasn't embarrassing that you won. They wasted their whole story waiting for you to lose. They were so focused on your problems, your mistakes, and your growth that they forgot about their own lives. They stopped working on themselves and started watching you like it was their job. And the funny thing is, while they were busy hoping for your failure, you were quietly becoming someone they couldn't beat even on their best day. Your growth showed them what they didn't want to see, their own lack of progress. You kept getting bigger even when it hurt. You kept getting better even when you were alone. You kept getting better even when no one was cheering you on. They stayed right where they were, going through the same jealousy, resentment, and tired habits over and over again. Their obsession kept them in place, but your determination pushed you forward. They thought that keeping an eye on you made them stronger, but it actually made them weaker. They cared so much about your life that they stopped caring about their own. They forgot about their goals, their relationships, and their duties because watching you was the most fun thing they could do. And when someone else's whole life depends on your failure, your success shows them how much time and energy they wasted. That's why the city isn't happy about your win. They are laughing at how silly your enemy's priorities are. People notice the difference. One person is working on their life, and the other is wasting it. One person was dedicated to growing, while the other was dedicated to gossip. One person is making plans for the future, and the other is spreading rumors. The difference was clear. Karma didn't bring them down. It was about focus. You chose to rise, but they chose to be obsessed. They chose to be petty, but you chose to be purposeful. And now the community knows the truth. They didn't look stupid because you did well. Their obsession did. You didn't beat them. They lost because their own plans were empty. People look the dumbest when they realized that the person they wanted to fail turned out to be everything they could have been if they had focused on themselves instead. Number 11. Your silence didn't give them away. Your results did. You weren't trying to be quiet. It showed how grown up you were. You didn't stay quiet to look wise or mysterious. You didn't say anything because you knew something they didn't. Results are more important than arguments. While they were busy making up lies out of anger, you were busy making a new version of yourself, out of self-discipline, focus, and respect for yourself. They wanted a response. You made a life instead, and nothing makes a liar look bad faster than a life that doesn't match what they say. They kept talking because that's all they could do. There was no proof, no history, and no integrity to back up what they were saying. Noise was the main thing that made their story work, but noise goes away when proof comes into the room. Your proof was very clear. There was no doubt about it. It was in your accomplishments, your growth, your peace, and your stability. You showed it by how you handled the chaos without losing your cool. It was in the glow they couldn't explain, the confidence they couldn't break, and the progress they couldn't stop. People didn't believe you because you stood up for yourself. They trusted you because they saw you change, while the other side stayed the same. They noticed that the gap was getting bigger. They saw that your hard work was paying off, and that your results were making things clearer. You didn't even have to say anything for clarity to become truth and truth to become exposure. That's why the city didn't need any explanations. They didn't need to hear a speech. They didn't need to fight. They just watched how your life played out, and the truth came out as I watched. If someone makes false accusations against you when you are growing, they were lying from the start. Your silence didn't help you win the fight. Your change did. By talking, you didn't expose them. You showed them who they really were by becoming someone their lies couldn't reach. Number 12. They looked dumb because they fought someone who wasn't fighting them. You were busy doing what you were meant to do. Conflict didn't show them what they were. It was a difference. They wanted to make your life a war zone, but you wouldn't pick up a gun. You were focused on something much bigger than their small problems. Your assignment, your healing, your growth, and your future. You were improving your mindset, building your character, and getting ready for chances they didn't even know you had. While they were practicing comebacks and making up drama, they hit someone who wasn't even in the ring. That's why everyone in the city thinks they're clowns. They thought you were weak because you didn't say anything, but it was a sign of strength. People who have a goal don't let silly things get in the way. They don't waste time defending themselves to people who don't matter. They don't fight with people who think chaos is a trait of their personality. You weren't ignoring them. You just didn't think they were important to the life you were making. And that's what hurt their feelings the most. They made it their full-time job to fight you. Not caring became your superpower. As time went on, the audience started to notice the difference. There was someone on one side who was angry, insecure, and jealous. On the other side was someone who was calm, focused, and too busy growing to even hear the noise. It was clear who was growing and who was going down. They were putting on a show, but no one clapped. The community finally understood that someone who is really being attacked doesn't rise up as quickly as you did. They are most embarrassed that they made you their mission while you made yourself your top priority. While you were thinking about your future, they were watching your every move. They were trying to get your attention while you were trying to reach your full potential. They were shadowboxing, sweating, talking, and performing, but you kept getting up without ever acknowledging the fight they were having in their heads. In the end, the truth made them look the dumbest. You can't win a fight with someone who never showed up. You were too busy doing what you were supposed to do to notice that they were swinging. The city is on your side because your character has stayed the same even when things have changed. Most people don't see consistency until it hits them in the face. When life is easy, doors are open, and nothing is threatening their comfort. Anyone can look good, but you You stayed honest and true to yourself even when things were crazy and stressful. And even though everyone, even the people who should have supported you, was questioning everything you did, your character didn't change when things got tough. It didn't crumble when criticism rained down. That unwavering consistency didn't just protect you. It built trust so deep that the city couldn't ignore it. The difference between you and your enemies was clear. They could perform stability when it benefited them, where the spotlight favored their version of reality. But true character, the kind that earns loyalty, doesn't switch depending on circumstance. It persists in private, in hardship, and in the moments no one is watching. And that persistence, that quiet, unshakable presence of integrity, is what made the city see you as reliable, honorable, and trustworthy. While they were unpredictable, reactive, and fueled by ego, you were steady, purposeful, and focused. People gravitate toward reliability because it signals safety, leadership, and truth. And over time, the community noticed the contrast between your resilience and their volatility. They saw who could handle adversity without losing composure, who could maintain principle when shortcuts would have been easier, and who could rise above drama instead of drowning in it. Your consistency didn't just earn you trust, it exposed their instability. The same people who tried to question you, manipulate you, and discredit you were revealed for what they really were: reactive, unreliable, and predictable in their downfall. Their weaknesses were magnified simply because your strengths were so visible and constant. In the end, the city sided with you, not because you shouted the loudest or acted the most convincing, but because your life told the story they could see with their own eyes. Your character has been steady even when everything around you wasn't, and that is the ultimate proof that loyalty, respect, and trust can never be faked. Number 14. They're eating their words because you ended up becoming the person they swore you'd never be. They had you packed. They told themselves stories about who you were, what you could do, and where your limits lay. They created a version of you small enough to control, fragile enough to manipulate, and predictable enough to dismiss. Every word they said about your inevitability to fail was a prophecy they repeated to convince themselves, and maybe even to convince the city, that you would never rise above their expectations. They assumed destiny had a script and that you were playing a role they had already written. But destiny doesn't follow the rules of fear and doubt, and you refused to play the character they assigned you. Every step you took, every goal you achieved, every barrier you overcame proved that their assumptions were not only wrong, they were laughably wrong. You became someone bitter, stronger, and more refined than they could have imagined. The version of you they swore would never exist is now undeniable evidence that their judgment was flawed from the start. Watching you rise became more than frustrating for them. It was embarrassing. They had invested energy, opinions, and even social credibility in a narrative that couldn't hold up against reality. Their predictions collapsed, not because you fought back, but because you quietly proved them false. Your growth didn't come from revenge. It came from purpose, persistence, and unwavering belief in yourself. And that is what makes it so striking. Their disbelief wasn't just wrong. It highlighted how little they actually understood. The city sees it all. They see someone thriving despite the doubt, someone evolving despite the criticism, someone fulfilling what everyone else swore was impossible. And that is why they are eating their words, not because you wanted to humiliate them, but because your life became a living contradiction to every lie, every assumption, and every limit they tried to impose. Your success is not a story of spite. It is proof of destiny, resilience, and the undeniable truth that those who misjudge greatness only reveal their own short-sightedness. Conclusion. When everything is finally put together, one truth becomes impossible to deny. You didn't just survive what was meant to destroy you. You turned it into the very proof that validated your purpose. Every attack, every rumor, every false prediction about your life only emphasized how deeply they misread the assignment God placed on you. They worked overtime to convince the city you were weak, unstable, or bound to fail. Yet, the very opposite unfolded right in front of everyone's eyes. The story they wrote for you collapsed because it was built on insecurity, while the life you built for yourself stands tall because it was built on truth. The city didn't side with you by accident. They watched your character stay solid under pressure. Your integrity remained untouched when tested, and your growth persisted even when it wasn't convenient. They witnessed a consistency your enemies could never imitate. They watched you elevate without clapping back, win without performing, and rise without stepping on anyone. And because of that, their trust in you became unshakable. You didn't win them with words. You won them with evidence. Your enemies, on the other hand, exposed themselves, their instability, their obsession, their envy, their desperation. It all unfolded in real time. They didn't lose because you fought them. They lost because they were so focused on planning your downfall that they neglected their own growth. They lost because they underestimated who you were becoming. They lost because everything they said about you turned out to be wrong. And now they're forced to swallow the very words they once used to diminish you. And here you stand, elevated, respected, validated, and aligned with purpose, not because of revenge, not because of ego, but because you remained committed to becoming the person you were always meant to be. Your story is living proof that destiny does not bow to doubt and purpose does not crumble under pressure. You became the version of yourself they swore would never exist, and that is why they look foolish and you look favored. If this message empowered you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, drop a comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support helps this message reach the people who are destined to rise just like you. God bless you.